to material musings, where the fabrics tell their tales. Eco-dyed colors from the garden, slow stitches where the heart exhales. Painting cloth and weaving stories, wall hangings blooming bright. Come create with Amanda, where your creativity takes flight.
Well, hello and welcome to today's Material Musings entitled, What About the Scraps? So I thought I would do an episode today looking at the things that we would normally discard, really, and it's symbolic in terms of other things that we could think about that we could potentially discard. And when we're looking at fabric and the different uses of fabric, so the fabric that makes garments, and when you think about that garment being made, you don't think about the bits that they cut out. So for instance, this top, this bit, what happens to that bit? Does it just get discarded and thrown into the rubbish, or is it made into something else, like cut in half and then it's like a pocket, or and then now that we've got the rise of fast fashion and the amount of fabric waste, and it's just outrageous, that then is shipped off to African countries like, say, Ghana, and we know in terms of the amount of waste that the so-called developed world creates, the waste, that there is no systems in place to make the most of it. Dispose of it properly. Or why do we need to be making, like, every season? I don't follow the seasons, but every season there's a new color, a new style, a new this. And we think about all the other things that are attached to this fast fashion when we look at the labor, child labor, slave labor, that these men, women and children have to, the conditions that they have to endure just so that you can get, I don't know, a phone case or a glistening phone case. I was thinking makeup, the mica that is mined, the batteries, the components that are sourced in mines, and these young men and children basically are forced to dig in these mines for days in abhorrent conditions. And we think about the waste. I have covered this. I think I'd mentioned it in a previous Material Musings, but the more and more I think about myself and how I'm contributing that, because you think to yourself, well, I'm not one of these designers who's making these things, but the things that you dispose of, the kind of materials that you wear or choose to wear, or, how are you recycling in an environment that doesn't recycle everything that they need to, or even, there's just a small fragment of the things that can be recycled that are recycled, if that. And, we just have to do better. We have to do better. Or, I say to myself, this is not really, but this is about the scraps, because it's an important issue, and it does tie into the scraps. But I was thinking to myself, if for every when you think about the things that you dispose of, and you think about, like, I just put out a bag of rubbish, and you think about all the components within that, like you've got the food scraps, you've got the cardboard, you've got the bottles, the plastic bottles, any packaging, and you think about how, if there were the systems in place, and yes, you can do it on a small basis, like, okay, food scraps, let me, you know, have a compost heap or a compost bin, and the cardboard, let me again, okay, there should be facilities to dispose of the cardboard bottles. We now have, here in Barbados, there are recycling, there's a private recycling company called Big B's, I think, and there's there used to be a pink van that recycled stuff, but I couldn't get them to come here. It wasn't at the particular time. So this was, a few years ago, but at the time the guy was saying, well, unless you can get some of your neighbors to take out membership, it's not worth me coming down. And I was just like, I will pay you to come and pick up my rubbish, my recycling, because I've been collecting for a year. So it was just like, I want to get rid of the stuff that's under my house to recycle anyway. But so there have been some changes, but generally on the whole, we're not recycling as much as we can. Now, the other thing that it kind of ties into is the manufacturers. So it's fine, like, you know, the countries and local boroughs having recycling facilities, but if the manufacturers are making things and packaging things in packaging that isn't easily recycled, because you need a whole range of complex machinery. Like when you take the plastics, there's like 7-8 different types of plastics and their uses and longevity and the way they break down. And so, you know, these are things, how can we think of then as an individual, how you do that? And you know, people called it hoarding, and it's just like, I know I'm not hoarding. I'm trying to get through the stuff and dispose of the stuff as creatively as possible. So how many tins do you use? How many tinned little planters can you use? How many tins that are rusting can I use in my eco dyeing? And I had just recently today found, prior to the single-use plastic and not single-use plastic, but prior to plastic bags being outlawed, kind of outlawed, I'll say, because they still sell them, and I don't know how efficient the recycling of the bags that are supposedly compostable, how that, when mixed with then other things like, you know, the food waste and other things, how easy is it to dispose of? It may break down, but then, you know, what then is released into the atmosphere? So but yeah, I found these bags. I'd had them for years, and where they were sitting upstairs, they must have had the sunlight on them, and so this has degraded them. And then when I picked up the first one, it just broke apart. And it's just like, if that's what's happening in our soil. That's, you know, the microplastics that if you put it in the soil and then you try and plant something in there, you know, if it's in the soil with all the other rubbish, you know, you can't plant anything on that land. You know, it's just full of, it's poisons that, you know, will then leach into whatever's growing and therefore into your body. So it was just like, okay, so what other thing can I do with this? It's degrading, but what can I do with this plastic? You know, what facilities are available to then, you know, it's something that I bought when I used to do, like, you know, craft stools and things like that. So when we look at, okay, well, what are the alternatives? What can we use? Paper bags, yes. We can make bags. So I do take around, you know, like, it's like those recycled bags that, you know, for your shopping, and I try not to purchase another one, or they'll usually give you the plastic one. So I've got that. I've got cloth bags. You've got the paper bags that then can be composted without any issue. So, and the fabric. So we've got all this fabric. So what I wanted to just do in this episode was to look at, I've got a variety of different stages of fabric. So I've got the really large stage, the smaller stage once it's cut up, what happens to it, how small are you actually going to go? I thought I had something here. How small are you going to go in terms of the size of the fabrics that you will hold on to? And what I'm going to show you in this episode is it can be the smallest piece of fabric that can be reused. You know, we look at the Boroshishiko, the Japanese style of mending, and look at how can we mend our clothes and make them, you know, give them a new lease of life, and how can we get rid of, which is what I'm in the process of doing, get rid of any man-made fibers within my clothes and just go for the more natural fibers. That's going to take a while because the more natural fibers are quite pricey, but it's something that I know. I was just sitting there, I had this dress on, and that's one of those really flirty, flowery dresses, but it's I didn't even know, I think it might be polyester, and I was sitting in it and I had this sudden feeling of, oh my gosh, I hate this dress. And it's not that I love the colour, but the fabric, and it was just like, this is not doing anything good for my health. Every time you wash it, you know, whatever plastics go into making it could be leaching into your skin, into your washing machine, and then not day in, day out, but whenever you put it on, you know, you've got that, as opposed to natural fibers being breathable, the eco dyes that may have been dyed, you know, the natural dyes, and the benefits that natural dyes then do for the body, and you know, I think I want more of that. And now I've seen they were looking at how to make, there was some clothes, I saw a couple of posts, so clothes made from seaweed, and obviously there's a process, and so you have to weigh up the process and say, okay, well, you know, how much is it taking me to make this? What resources are being used? We've got hemp, we've got, you know, linen, flax seeds, and then we've got cotton. And how can we introduce these at a more affordable price point so that more people can then start, you know, having clothes that are actually good for their health, whether that's an idea that the general consensus would go for, because, you know, it's very cheap to make man-made fibers. But orange peel, there was a a company that had started looking at the pulp of fruit pulp. I think pineapple, orange and mango were different ones, mango, leather, the way that you can, it's just very interesting. And, you know, to think about how we can look at what we're doing to our environment and for generations to come, and how we can be a more positive influence in this whole process. So looking at the fabric, even the fabric, because I know that it's split between natural fibers and processed fibers, but the man-made fibers, I'm not just gonna throw them out. I'm going to maybe look at how do I use this in something that is not sitting on my skin. You could make things like, you know, like a coaster or something like that, or something that, yeah, it doesn't, you're not gonna wear it, or it could be in a piece of art, or, you know, like I use a lot of fabric in my art, and then again it's more natural fibers, but how can you use it, make use of it, rather than throw it away? Yes, I want to get rid of a lot of these the clothes that I have with the man-made fibers, but how can I make use of them, unless there's a processing plant that can deal with that in an ethical way and, you know, create bricks with it or something, you know, find a use like that. So, yeah, so what I wanted to do was show you all the things, the potential things you can make, because I've got the smallest of scraps that you still don't want to throw away and contribute to the landfill. So what can you do with them? What about those scraps? So I'll show you some of the things, and that might give you some ideas. Show you some of the things that I've taken them and used, and I've embraced the collector in me and moved forward and try to see in how I can make the most of these things in a creative way that will provide ongoing use, and that will you know, beautify even the environment. So let us get a move on, and I will show you some of these things. Okay, so I just wanted to mention very briefly, you've got paper scraps too. So if you know that, if you know, you know, and you will understand. But if you're into miniature, so a lot of the paper scraps, like these are all small mini journals that I've made in a bookcase made from cardboard. So this is one of the ways, and I'll show you, I mean, I've got a whole course on making these cardboard bookshelves, but different ways in which you can, you know, use the cardboard, use the paper. And this is a small mini journal with a lot of scraps of paper that would normally have been thrown away. This is just the first stage that my journals will go through. You know, you're laying down paper, and then you might come to it and decide, okay, I'll work on this one. And it's very, like, really low commitment in terms of the time that creating on this page is going to be. And then it might just be, actually, all I've got time for is to make some marks. So you might then go in and just make marks on that particular page and then leave it there. So all of these small journals provide a service, and this particular one is about self-care, and it's about, you know, the things, these are papers that I've already made, used in other projects, and then there's just bits left over. So why not take that intention that I had with that small piece and put it towards something else? And yeah, as I say, I really love, I made 4 different types of bookcases in my course, and yeah, I can spend in one of the art journaling videos maybe next month going through some of the ways in which you can work in smaller journals like this, look at some of the ways in which I've used paper. This is like a magazine, yeah, so you can see. But I've kept the colours rather than paint over it, but I could do. And I've got myself a stand for and a nice bookcase for all my mini journals. So let's get on to the fabric, which is the main. Oh, and the mini journals can be as mini. Look at that. So this one, it's say 3 inches, is it? No, it's not even 3 inches. Hold on, where are we? It's 2.5 inches by 2 inches. And this one, which is even smaller, again, using all of the bits of paper, is, yeah, 1 inch by 1 inch, yeah? So, and that brings joy. That can be part of a doll's house, which I haven't yet made, but I'm looking at, again, using, you know, we go through the milk cartons, and so you might have the almond milk cartons, so you'll have the boxes. And this is one of the uses of these bookcases, the boxes that you get, whether it's from a large, you know, item that you've bought, or, you know, just a milk carton, basically a milk carton box, and looking at ways in which you can use it for something else. Now, if you were to go out and buy this it would be made from plastic, and you think about all the resources, the amount it would cost, and you can put something together yourself that looks really nice, is gonna last for a very long time. And yeah, you can start making some mini journals. Yeah, so that's that. And so let's get on to the fabric, because we could go on forever with these. I mean, look at the varieties of journals. We've got some leather covered ones. Oh, I just love this one. Very chunky leather journal there. And all the different things, again, ribbon. So offcut of ribbon that might have been thrown away is then used in a journal as, you know, it can go on a key ring, it can, you know, go as a necklace or whatever. Anyway, so let's get on with the fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the things on my desk first, and then we'll look into the containers, because they contain even more things. Actually, this is the first thing that we'll look at. So when you think of scraps, you know, I mean, it's really dependent on what your perception of what a scrap is. But talking any size fabric, look at that. Now that normally throw away. But again, all of these, you know, from the different sizes, I just keep them in here, and these will usually go on to make larger things. I'll put them together. But everything gets a second chance. You know, strips of things that I've cut. These are larger pieces from material that I made a skirt out of this material. So this is the bits that were left over. So I guess they're bigger scraps. Yeah, so you can, you know, obviously you decide for yourself the size that you're gonna keep, but when you realize even the smallest bits you can turn into something that will bring joy and a sense of purpose, you'll start collecting even more. Yeah? Okay, so this is my ever increasingly sized bag. I do have another space, a couple of spaces with larger, what I call larger scraps. You know, they're not ones that can make an item of clothing, but this could be a miniature book cover, or you know, part of a page on a book cover. This is actually man-made fibre, and this was a sleeve, a top that I'd cut. But that could be used to make something, or I could even just take inspiration from the patterns on here. You know, you can get inspiration a variety of different ways, so that might be something. Or it might be that this becomes a stuffing for something, like a doll that I'm making. Or I'd love to make some really life-size dolls. They're really great for use in different therapeutic settings. But you know, even the thread, so you know, don't even throw that away, because it can all go and be used in other projects, which we're going to have a look at. So I just keep that in this container here, which is bursting at the seams, and then I have, as I say, other smaller containers with fabric scraps. So the first, we'll look at this. So this is a technique actually, where you take, you know, all your fabric and you layer it on a surface. So you layer it on a surface, and then, you know, you put it in strips, and then you cover it with a kind of a sheer fabric, and then you stitch it in lines, and you leave distinct places where you can cut. And then what you do is you cut in between the lines, and you're left with an area that is frayed. And so with that, you get you know, specific look. So I had made this was going to be like an everything's a sidekick journal, but I made this was going to be a wall hanging initially, and then I just didn't go through with it. And then recently I thought, let me make a little mini journal cover that is one that is it can transfer onto other journals. So this is another journal again, but we can look at the and see some of the scraps in here. So we've got bits that have made in different small clusters again, and we can create a focal point. I've created little pockets here. I've used this piece of fabric. There's a cluster here, and then this piece of fabric, which is not really a scrap, it's much larger than a scrap, as the page, yeah, doodled on there, doodled. There we go. So that's that. And then I've got these, not necessarily scraps. I had stamped on I made some fabric stamps, and then I've stamped them on this piece of fabric that I had dyed. It didn't come out as quite as the colour that I wanted, but it's just like I'd stamped quite a few pieces, and then I'm just allowing inspiration to strike and then say, actually do this with it, you know. So I could go back in, add colour, stitch it. It just sits in here for the time being in the pocket. Yeah, so that's one of the uses of scraps. So on the flip side of this, I had done the same thing with a different kind of fabric, which is this fabric. It's this exact same technique, but I had smaller pieces, and I thought, let me make a little tiny bowl, and it can fit, you know, little trinkets in there. You just happen to have a stone on your table. I've got quite a few stones that I collect, and so I made that particular one. And then we've got another little one. It's just got some earrings sitting in it. And again, scraps where I'd stamped on there. I've just added it to this mini fabric bowl. This is some slow stitching I did. So I just took some scraps and slow stitched them together into a cluster and just left it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it will have a use, and it came in handy as the base for this. And then this was just some lace that had been cut from another piece of fabric. Again, was just sitting there. But, you know, you can take it and use it to make different things. So I just want you to really look. This is just another mini journal waiting to have its cover, and then some inserts in there. So I'm just going to put that in there for now. So that's those. We've got, again, creating clusters on pieces of work that you can then either embellish. These are 3 pieces of scrap fabric that has been stitched together. Yeah. And then this here. And then even, you know, I've made the neck piece for this figure, and that's just taken from a scrap of fabric there. Okay, we've got, this is a mini journal, but using some of the scraps to make different things. Like we've got the houses. So I was using a larger piece of this fabric as a backing for a piece of artwork that I was working on, and then there was just loads of bits of scraps. So it was just like, okay, let's, you know, take them and add them to this and turn it into something that I like using. Again, another piece of scrap, added a word to it. And we've got some other clusters here that I was working on. Again, just stitching pieces together. So this activity in itself is one that is relaxing. And when you think, you know, these came out of that bag. I just took a handful and said, okay, I'm going to work on these, you know. And let me just take a handful and I can demonstrate just, it's a long piece of wool there. Okay, let's just take that. The other thing is, once they get really small, you've got all the fibers that, you know, you just got to be mindful. Okay, so that's just a little bundle. I'll just keep there as we go through some of them. And again, you know, you can just put random bits together. You can stamp them with word stamps. You can add, you know, different stitched techniques, French knots. This has got some ribbon on it. So any, you know, this has got some wool. I didn't try to couch it. I couched it along this piece. This was a dyed piece that was on a larger piece, and it was just like, let me just take a alternate, you know, different coloured fabric, not fabric, wool and thread. Fabric. Look at this doll. So this was when I was in making Zen, and I can't remember the name of the teacher at the time, but looking at how you can use the scraps or small pieces of fabric and make just like little dolls that, you know, can sit on your desk or your shelf. And it was just nice to be able to again find another use for some of the pieces that I was going to say they held sentimental value, but I just like fabric. And, you know, some of the fabric, yes, you know, I've had for quite a long time. And yes, you know, some could be classed as vintage. Okay, we've got, well, not so much scraps, but yes, I mean, you could class these as scraps again that have gone to make something. This was supposed to be a mushroom, and it was going to go in this house, so actually it might as well keep them together. And some of my figures that I created as art foamies, I've got some of those in there. But this is an example of mini wall hangings that I've made, again using a lot of the scraps that I've got, and even the ones that, you know, were just offcuts here down the side can create, you know, a different feel. You could add some, you know, really fine beads, seed beads along there. Painted fabric, again, fabric clusters. Here's another one with just small pieces that, okay, yeah, I could have, you can throw them away, but I'm repurposing them. And so this was some ones that I had woven, and I've got some of my cotton from my garden in here, little small pieces, and yeah, just added some scrap in strips together and stitched it, slow stitching. So again, they're really nice projects that you can do and put them together. We've got some sari fiber in here. You know, I do a lot of words on some of my smaller pieces of fabric, and then you can add them to larger projects. And again, we've got these here in exactly the same way. This is one that I'm starting, I can't remember the technique, but you use small bits of fabric on foam, on a foam board, and insert it and create an image. And there's some wonderful images that you can create with this technique. I've got some mini, I'd call these journal like pouches, and I did a session and made these. So again, you know, if you wanted to put your journal in a protective case or carry it around, you know, you can make these. So these incorporate the larger pieces of fabric and scrap fabric as well, so you can, you know, make them up in a whole wide range of ways. These are both stitched and, you know, we're using fabric glue as well, so if you're not feeling the stitching all the small bits, you can stick them down. And I do have a mini class coming up showing you how to make some of these, you know, using different fabric. This is a pocket here, painted fabric, you know, dyed fabric, etc. And then these, which always bring out, ooh, from me, I love fabric beads. So these, again, what a wonderful way to use your scrap fabric. You can make a masterboard of fabric, the scraps, and put them together, or like these just literally take bits of fabric wrapped around, and then you can decorate them. Let me come in so you can see their gorgeousness. Yeah, and then if you've still got straws in your possession, you can put the straws in the middle, and they can be the things that hold it, you know, keeps it kind of to a certain shape. Like these ones, yeah, they've all got, I think I make all my beads like this, so they've all got a plastic insertion, because there was at one point, you know, when they started banning them, when they banned the plastic straws, it was just like, I think I'd, you know, got a whole load, you know, you just kept some in the drawer, in the everything drawer, and it was just like, well, we're not using this, we don't use them in the house, so why not create a craft activity? But any kind of plastic insert, there's usually, you know, like a roll of something, small roll, you can make these, or you'll find the inserts with, you know, that you can use to make straws, not used to make straws, but used to make the, this is like a base for a fabric bead that I started, and I've just wrapped it in cloth. And then what I'd probably do is, for the first few wrappings, just put on fabric that you're not really too into, like this particular brown one, unless it was paired with another one and, you know, it brightened it up. But you could put some together and then just glue it in the first instance until you're ready to, say, maybe add some seed beads or add some embellished with some fibres. Again, look at the threads that you may have, like I showed you the little bag of threads that I started collecting. Like if I'd cut this off from a piece of work, I would have kept this, because again, it can be used for, you know, these straws, these beads. And even this one, this was from a garment that I'd cut the sleeves off, and I just started wrapping this, and I can wrap it and just, you know, make sure that I show some of the blue, some of the other side, until it gets to a size that you think, okay, I'm ready to add some stitches, and then you just run your needle through there, and that will just make sure everything stays compact. Again, wrap it with some yarn, and then that secures it as well, and then it can be used in your creative projects. Yeah, so we also have these fishes, again utilizing larger piece of fabric and smaller bits of fabric, and so that's where some of them also would be used. And you make a little handle for it to be either hooked somewhere, or you can chain them together in a, you know, like a garland kind of thing. And you can vary the size, you know, of the bead. You can have some chunky ones, some nice chunky ones. This one doesn't have a hole in it, but it's just, I mean, this can be a brooch actually. I can just put one of those things at the back, and then it's a nice brooch. Add some bead in, or, you know, put a word there. Again, you can use larger beads if you want, and then you have a really nice look at that. I used some of the scraps to do some weaving on, this is recycled bits of wood here, and I've just covered it and made a little woven piece, again using scraps, using fibers as well. Again, it's just nice to play and work on different surfaces. We've got the traditional, but the snippet rolls. So again, using, you can do a master sheet and make these. But again, this was how I did it: laid down the fabric, then stitched it, and then cut it up into these little rolls. And this particular one, I've actually used some of it and been cutting it up, and then that's what's left. So I could, you know, add to this and stitch it on. Here's some fabric waiting to be used, some strips that I had dyed, tea dyed in this one. So this is another typical way to use some of your scraps. Look at all the different colours. Now imagine if I had thrown these away, I wouldn't have this gorgeous display of, you know, it's just different, you know, even just as a record of things that you've used, that you've painted. Some of my first African fabric, which is this, it's just like it takes me back, and there's just like a little small piece of it there. And again, all I've done is I've stitched this particular piece of fabric was added afterwards. So each of these individual pieces are from bits that I've stitched, I might have cut up, and all of this. And what I was going to do with this was make a journal cover. Yeah, so it was going to go like, either like that. I like this, I would have liked this bit at the top. I don't want it as the inside of the cover. And I'm not really feeling that as the front. See, this is more of the cotton that I picked, and I've just carded it and then added some slow stitch to it on a piece of, it's jeans material there. Yeah, let's come in. Yeah, Sea Island cotton. Barbados Sea Island cotton is one of the best cottons, fibers in the world. So soft. There's a weaver called Ade, and Sylvester Ade Clark, and he's one of the top weavers in Barbados, and he uses a lot of Sea Island cotton in his work and other imported cottons. But his, you know, he will tell you the softness, the quality of the Sea Island cotton, and the softness is second to none. So I wanted to incorporate that, so maybe that will be the top bit of the, yeah, it may well be another journal cover, very similar to this one. You know, I could have a roving journal. Ooh, look at, oh, let me come out so that you can actually see. I put the insert that was in here, and yeah, you could just make a journal that is, you know, this is like a replaceable cover that you can use again and again. So I think that's what it's going to have to become. Put some pockets in here, and I can add some things, add some pens and things like that, and it's good to go. Maybe add some beading. I like this kind of straggly fraying look. This particular material is, yeah, really does fray quite a lot. But yeah, so again, these are all scraps, yeah, that have found a second use. I'm getting a good tour here. But this is just, it's a joy to, it's actually a joy for me to go through. Again, more pieces where you can take the small pieces, add to it, and stitch them. You combine them and join them together. And here's another good example of one where I've done that. You know, use some of the smaller pieces and create your reality. Create some words, add some words and stitch them. I won't go through everything. There was one that I was looking for that I had made, but I really don't know where it is. So this uses a variety of different elements. We've got the scrap fabrics. These are painted fabrics, dyed fabrics, you know, fabrics that have been written on. And then we've got, this is an example of a man-made fibre that I would not like the feel of it on my skin, but made a stitch piece. This is actually cardboard with different textures. And then I found an elephant. Somebody gave me an elephant necklace, and it had these little small ones on it, and it was just like, it's not, I can't put this kind of metal on my skin. So I've added it to this. Peace, love and grace. Really tiny small written bits there. But yeah, so you get the idea of creating clusters and you know, small things that you can create using smaller bits of fabric. This is painted fabric, but again, another small piece of fabric. We've got some, you know, painting here, stamping. I experimented with glitter. It was just like I suddenly had, or felt, it feels like I've got a never-ending supply of glitter, because it doesn't matter how much you use, you'll never get through it. And that's been my experience. Maybe I need to start using it in a lot more things, but I liked the way that it came out here. And again, you know, creating words, stitched words is really nice. And a lot of these are, yeah, kind of, you know, experimental and just seeing how I get on with, again, just using up, really. You can make cards as well. This is like a card on fabric. I could frame this. I could add more detail to it. But it's just to really experiment and see what you get, what you can come up with. And yeah, you do end up with a lot of small bits that could be used, but you end up with some lovely bits that can be used. So I recently designed my own Art Foamies, and Art Foamies, KP and Fodder School in collaboration with them. And we brought a set of 6 images out, and yeah, I used, you know, I stamped on fabric and then added bits of fabric, collaged them together, created, you know, different looks. See, this is a selection of just scrapped fabrics put together, and then you don't see it anymore as scrap fabric. You don't see it as, oh, it's a bit that you would throw away. It's just a really nice element that comes together on a larger piece in a new way. And this one has a variety of clusters to it. I'm still gonna add some additional pieces to it until I feel that it's where I want it to be. Yeah, and using different fabrics, different stitches, adding them together, painting them. And this is actually canvas that I painted. Didn't like the painting. Well, not really didn't like it, but it just, it didn't come out as I'd wanted to, but I like the colour. So it was just like, I know I can use you for something else. And then I guess finally what I'll end with is some larger framed pieces that I did. Right, so we've got these outside of the Kawandi. It was the Kawandi that actually really inspired me to make these. And the Kawandi, if you're not familiar, is a... I'm going to show you. Just happened to be here because I'm working through it. So I did say that I would at some point show you where we've got. Ooh, let's come out. So what I've managed to do on here is I've done most of the stitching around, right, around this. And what I'm now doing is focusing now on the figures. And so I've started on this one's hair, and I'm going to do the face. So the figures are going to be stitched as well. Initially I just did around the borders, but yeah, I want to add the thread around, and that's what I'll be doing to those ones. And to these ones, adding actual bodies to the lower ones. And yeah, so the whole of, let me turn it sideways. So we've got, yeah, the whole of this now has been stitched. And it's just the finer detail, and whether or not I add like you know, beads, or whether I just stick with stitches that I've got, or whether I add beads. I'm actually feeling beads, which I may have discussed in previous videos. But yeah, as I say, I'm just taking my time with this. I'm keeping going, but obviously there's other things that are coming up. But I like the colours, I like the way that it's feeling, and I decided not to rush myself, that it had to be, you know, looking a particular way, because that's where you then don't enjoy the project as such, and it becomes like a production line, and it's just like, this isn't part of, I'm not on any production line. Okay, so yeah, so this is the Kawandi uses, it's traditionally done by the Sidi women, who were stolen from Africa, brought to India, and this is one of the things that they do. They make, it's also, you know, known as a quilt. So you'd call it a quilt, but it's called a Kawandi, which means quilt. Basically, and it takes small pieces of sari fibre, yeah, and they stitch them together in a particular way. So what I've done is done the outside edges in that technique, and then added the middle section. The middle section had been stitched. Added these figures. So these figures are from my art Foamies as well. You can also get digital downloads of some of the images if you prefer. And yeah, I like the inclusion of a figure alongside a piece like this, and there are some wonderful inspiring artists, Kianga Art, Sherry Whetstone, they're very talented, and others, Bisa Butler, Faith Ringgold, who stitch figures, and who creates some amazing fabric art pieces, and that's just to name a few. They are my inspiration. And yeah, so that is that, and I take my time with this. But so the Kawandi is what inspired these pieces, and I was teaching on making Zen, and so I decided to take the technique of using the scrap fabrics, because as people who play with fabric and use fabric and, you know, create with fabric rather, you know, we all have those scrap pieces that we, you know, sure, there's many different ways in which other people use it. So yeah, I decided to take the small scraps and add to a figure that I had created. So this is yeah, the owl. I didn't actually create this owl. I took this from something else and used it, but I've added elements to this piece, and it's a frame, and then, you know, the back can be hung up or whatever. And then I did some alternate ones without a border. I left this like raw because when you cut your fabric, you can actually do it quite straight, unless you wanted to add, say, some sort of border like this with the beading. Yeah, and then I went on to figures. So that is one of the ones that I've done in my course. Let me show the other one. Right, so in my course where I taught on making Zen, but I've got a course on my platform called Stitch Folks, and I'll show you how to take an image. It's there, the image comes included. There's two different images that you can use, and you can create these pieces. So when we look around here, we've got the scrap fabrics, small pieces of fabric that once you stitch on them, it has, I just really love the way that they look. So they're, you know, flattened, but it looks like it's one cohesive piece, and it's just, you know, you've just got the hints of colour, and then if you repeat colours, then you get, you know, that kind of, everything just is working harmoniously together. So again, you know, you've got scrap fabrics here, all different small pieces placed together to look whole. And on this one, the you know, the head, the around the edges, the fabrics in the area on her neck and chest is scrap fabrics, and you know, you can then put a border around it however you feel. And then the latest one that I've done, which is going to be another course as well, is to show how to create felted figures and then using the scrap fabrics as well. So this one incorporates all of the scrap fabrics in the board around the outside, and then you've got this figure made from felt and the embellishments, and I really love how it turned out. So I've got a course coming up. I think it's probably going to be called Felted Folks. We've got Stitch Folks and we've got Stitched and Felted Folks. But yeah, so all of the different ways in which, you know, we can use scrap fabrics. Yeah, what about scrap fabrics, eh? What about the scrap fabrics? There's so much you can do with it, and so many ways in which, you know, we can give what we're doing a second life, and we can bring joy not only to yourself but to loads of other people around you as well. So I'm going to end it there, and I hope that that's inspired you to maybe think about some of the ways in which, you know, you not only use fabrics that can you would normally discard, but give it a second life, and think about your own skills and ideas and abilities that you think, no, I'm not even going to bother with that, it doesn't make sense. And when you really, give it time and put some effort and work into it to really develop it, you bring something that you never thought you would do to life, and you go on to bless so many other people and bless yourself as well. So I look forward to seeing you again, and look forward to seeing how you would use your scrap fabrics. Take care for now.